Okay, everybody, we're taking another stab at this Neotec 2515C. In the video previous to this one on the channel, if you haven't seen it, go back and watch it. But basically, I received this. It was providing quote-unquote no picture. I didn't know if that was, bad flyback, no high voltage, no B+, no raster. I didn't know what that meant. So it turns out the chassis was totally dead. And it was totally dead. No ticking, no power, no signs of life, like it wasn't even plugged in, it did nothing. And it turns out that in that case, it was the switch mode power supply chip right there, IC101. That switch mode power supply IC was bad. After replacing that, I got the chassis to come to life and it functioned. However, it would take, a minute or so for it to turn on. You'd hear it go tick, 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 tick. And then eventually the ticking would go tick, 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 and then the chassis would turn on. If you go back and watch the video, you'll see the moment where it actually came to life. But it shouldn't be doing that. So what that told me was that something was still wrong in the power supply section. So I thought that it was still the switch mode power supply chip. So the original one that I put in there, I thought it was faulty. So I put another one in there, and the ticking lessened. It would just go tick, tick, and then fire up. So I thought that I was okay to live with that. I thought it was the original chip that I replaced. I thought that was bad. But I went ahead and released the video and called it done. I let this run for 8 hours with no problem. And then I got up this morning and I thought, it was just eating at me. I didn't want to give this back to the owner with that problem. Technically, the chassis was working, but I don't know if I'd be happy with that, and I know that the owner probably wouldn't be happy with that. I mean, eventually it does come on, but who wants to sit there and wait for it to go tick, 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 and then turn on? Nobody wants that. So I took another stab at this and painstakingly went over everything that you could possibly think of, resistors, diodes, everything, and everything was checking out. So as a last-ditch effort, I changed out a component based off logic. Going off this logically, the fact that it would have to warm up. So basically you turn it on and it would go tick, 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 and then fire up. Based off of that, I had to suspect that it was a capacitor because a resistor is only going to do what it needs to do as far as resisting the current. But the capacitors have to charge up and discharge and charge up and discharge. So if you turned it on and let it run for, 5-10 minutes and turned it off and turned it back on immediately, it would come right on. But if you let it run for 5-10 minutes and turn it off and wait 30 seconds to turn on, it would go tick, 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 and then turn on. So I knew at that point, after thinking about it logically and giving it some time, I knew it had to be a capacitor problem. But all the caps have been replaced, right? Well, no. One of the caps was not replaced, and it's the one that you normally don't change unless there's a problem. And I have never, ever had to replace this capacitor on a Neotec chassis until today. So I'm going to turn this on and give you a recap of what's happening, and then we'll change this capacitor out, and I'll show you the aftermath here. So let's turn it on, and you can see and experience and hear what's actually happening. 1, 2, 3. You can hear that. Dun, 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 dun. Now it's taking forever. And it's trying. It almost did it. Now I can make this work by lowering the B+ to like 108. Right now it's set to 125 the way it's supposed to. But if I lower the B+ to 108, then it'll fire up somewhat quickly, but it still does this ticking thing. Anyway, to save you the effort or time of having to wait for this to turn on, it does eventually turn on, but you can hear it. Now, if you let this run for another 30 seconds or so, I'm going to turn it off. The chassis will eventually turn on. It will eventually turn on and run. If you go back and watch the previous video, you'll see that it eventually does turn on. So if I just take a screwdriver and I actually lower the B+ from where it's at now to like 108, it'll fire up. So, and of course I don't want to leave B+ at 108. So the problem with this is the filter cap. This filter cap is bad. This is I've never actually seen a bad filter cap on a Neotec chassis of this series before. I've never had to change one out ever. But in this case, this one's bad. And not only is it bad, it's the wrong rating, because I have a parts 2515C in the closet over here. I stole the filter cap off of it, and you can see here that it's 400 volt 330 microfarad. For some reason, this one's 220, and it's original. It's got the glue on the bottom of it, but I don't understand why this one's 220 and this one's 330, and they're both a 2515C. The parts chassis and this one are both the same chassis, but the filter cap's different. So I took this one off and put this one in, and right up, not a single tick. I let it sit for an hour and turned it on for the first time after letting it sit for an hour, and it fired up immediately, no ticks, no nothing. So this filter cap is absolutely bad. You have to wait for it to charge up, charge up, charge up. Once it finally charges up to fully 220, or whatever it needs to charge up to, 220 is what it's rated, then the chassis will turn on. But the filter cap is not charging up. It's bad. So I put this one in, and it fired right up first try, no ticks, perfect. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this out and put this one in, and we'll turn it on, and you can see the difference. And there you go. So the replacement filter cap, the 330 microfarad one from the parts 2515C is installed. Here's the original one, and you can see this one's 220 for some reason, and it's some brand called Tossin or Tossin. I've never heard of this, but I can tell you I'm going to be tossing it right in the garbage. So the replacement one's installed. I'm going to turn this on. It's been sitting for 30 minutes. Haven't touched it. I got the cap changed out and let it sit for half an hour. It's been sitting untouched for half an hour. So I'm going to turn it on here, and it should turn on immediately with no ticking and be totally normal here. So 1, 2, 3. Right on. So all that time it was a bad filter cap. And if we look at the screen here, there you go. And B plus is still, haven't touched the pot, should still be exactly 125. And yeah, it's just, I wouldn't have ever thought of this. I mean, using logic and reasoning based off of my knowledge of how this stuff works, and the fact that it would have to, you know, tick, 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 and it would have to charge up and energize and get hot and heated and wait for something to warm up before it finally energized and turned on. I knew it had to be a cap, and the fact that the original switchbone power supply chip was faulty, again, I just was suspectful of something in the power supply, and it turned out to be the filter cap. So just a quick follow-up on this. I'm glad I got it figured out. I did not want to send this out in that condition. Even though it did technically work eventually, I would not have been happy with that. So yeah, quick follow-up. Everything works now, so we're good to go. Thanks for watching. I appreciate it. Like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.